Rise for the country, see the children rise.
For your country,
Whoa.
for your country.
Rise for the country, land beloved, baby I.
For your country.
The Emancipation Festival is a celebration of our ancestors' freedom from colonialism. It was in 1834 the Emancipation Act was passed abolishing slavery in the British Virgin Islands.
This is really marking the end of an era of, really atrocious and horrific acts of barbarism on millions of people over a long period of time. And I think that reality has to be central to the celebrations themselves. Yes, it is there's entertainment. Yes, there's fun to be had, there's joy, but that sobering thought must linger in the backs of our minds as the reason why we can actually have a celebration is emancipation. It's a celebration of liberation. So the freedom that we express with our bodies, with our mouths, with our souls, is a freedom in contrast, to the chains and the bondage that we are coming from. So I think that always has to be kept in mind, that this isn't just a celebration, it isn't just entertainment. It's a celebration with a purpose. It's a liberation from bondage that we are commemorating, and that must always be kept central to our activities.
I'm speaking about our ancestors who came across the oceans and landed on these shores through something called the slave trade, or we can call it Holocaust. And it's very important to know about them because they became us. For example, who is Moko Jumbi? Let's start with the word Jumbi. We probably don't remember where this word comes from. This word means the ancestors. Our ancestors back in the 18th century and before laid victuals and food on the graves of the recently passed in hopes that their journey to the afterlife would go well and that they would bring blessings back to the people. Who is Moko? Moko was the ancestor who lived outside the village. He danced on stilts, and his sole purpose was to protect the village from evil and harm. What a wonderful cultural legend. He crossed the oceans and came to the Virgin Islands. The point here is that Virgin Islands culture has a history that stems back a very long time. It was created on this soil but has roots deep in the past. And it is the case that there should be reminders and markers all around the territory of who the people were and what the culture was.
The festival is celebrated on the first Monday of August every year and showcases our heritage through several activities, including marches, church services, local and international music, pageants, food fairs, and parades.
When you look back, the first Monday in August in 1834 is a significant milestone for us as a people. And it's important that we celebrate this, but celebrate this with giving thanks as well. And that's why events such as the Freedom March, the Emancipation Service, the Sunrise Service that's put on by the Heritage Month Committee, these are all very key events that highlight the importance of the festival. So, it's important that people attend these as well, because there you get the crux of the celebration.
It is that time again when we celebrate another Emancipation Festival, and in our preparations, we pause to reflect on the history and significance of these celebrations.
The slaves in the British Caribbean were given their freedom August the 1st, 1834. In the whole of the English-speaking Caribbean, the slaves were freed. It was a Sunday that the proclamation, unlike what has been said, the proclamation was not read from here. The proclamation was read from the pulpits of the Anglican Church on Virgin Gorda and Tortola and the Methodist Church. The slaves knew about it, and the Monday the slaves were, so you could say, given a day off from work, and they celebrated in their own way. And that has been, from then till now, the first Monday in August. As long as there's a first Monday in August, it will be August Monday for us.
On the eve of emancipation, I think we always forget this one, our ancestors assembled in Methodist churches, as far as I know, 11 o'clock Thursday night coming to the Friday morning. They assembled in Methodist churches in Eastern Rotanga and so on, and they waited for emancipation. And when the 12 o'clock hour come, they were free. And they started a lot of parading and so on. And from that we get this early morning tramp and sunrise tramp. You see, it's tied into our history. So we have a historical celebration of our festival, and we like to keep it that way. And we like to see our culture and our heritage portrayed in the parades, so that we can look back on where we came from and give an idea where we should go for the future.
I was a member of the Coronation Committee in 1953, and out of that in 54 we said if we could have had such a lovely time with a parade for the coronation, we could do it for August Monday. And in those days, August Monday used to be what they call Fete on the Field, a sort of picnic over on the old recreation ground. One year the Methodists, one year the Anglicans. In 54 we decided we would have troops and we would start, the parade started at the government house parking lot and came up Main Street and ended at the old recreation ground. That happened, the parade took that route until 1975. In 76, we had the very first float in the country, and we couldn't go up Main Street. When you got there by Little Denmark, the float couldn't turn. So we went up at the waterfront for the very first time, and we had festival going up on the waterfront. In those days, we used to have a torchlight procession. There was very few. We didn't have as many cars. The lights would go out 12 o'clock and so forth. We had a torchlight procession. We didn't have floats because we didn't have that sort of thing. But we had troops and everybody walked. The young lady who was the festival queen, as she was called, up until 1975, she would ride an Old Bruleys convertible, which was the only convertible in the place. And she would ride on that until we got to the old recreation grounds where the parade would end, such as what was the parade.
Festival celebrations have evolved over the many years, and there have been added dimensions to the activities. Some persons have expressed that this is a departure away from the true significance of emancipation.
And yet this is something that we can never forget, should never forget, can never forget. We should never forget the old ways, and we can never forget emancipation. We can't forget the period of slave trade, the period of enslavement, and all of the history that happened up until the period of emancipation. Yes, we are always moving into the future. Yes, we move this culture into the future. We must forge ahead. But at the same time, we must always be connected to the root. This is especially important for the young people of the Virgin Islands. Knowledge of one's history unites a people. It gives one a foundation. One knows where the starting point was. This provides a sense of identity.
History shows that the celebration started with the church. Back in 1954, that's when things shifted, because up until that time, it was the Anglican Church as well as the Methodist Church who together organized and conducted festival. It was also called Fete on the Field. It was a time of cultural celebration.
So what I honestly think is that we should try to portray more about what festival is all about. We should get maybe get the schools involved. When I was the Minister of Education, I insisted that the schools became involved and come with something. And the schools read the principals, they participated. And we should show more of what festival is all about. Yes, it is a celebration, but it's a celebration of what? A celebration of your freedom, freedom from bondage, and it's of your freedom to celebrate in whatever way you want, and that is what we do.
You know, I think it's important that we continue to stress the fact that this is an emancipation festival. You know, it's easy to think that, you know, that the focus of this is a music fest or something like that. You know, and that's part of it. But the central rallying cry behind festival in the British Virgin Islands is emancipation, recognizing and commemorating that moment in our history. And that should never, you know, move away from the central reason why we are holding a festival. And I think there's never an excuse, right, to stop celebrating emancipation. Okay? And I think that is how I feel about the issue. And I think that's how I will continue to feel about it.
As the residents in the territory celebrate the Emancipation Festival 2018, financing for this year's activities have been scaled back as a result of the severe damage caused by the devastating hurricanes of 2017. This decision was met with mixed reviews from the public, but there is a belief that this is an opportunity to revisit the true meaning of the celebrations.
The festivities, I think this year we have a very good opportunity to look at it again. It got a bit out of hand, if we're to be honest with ourselves, with 3 festivals across territory that ended up being somewhere in the region of $1.5 to $2 million. And there have been cases where it has gone past $2 million in years gone by. We have to take stock of that and put our resources to better use, making sure, of course, that the reasons for the celebrations are very clear. And we were able to do that this year by making sure that we brought some persons in as part of the committee whose background is in history. And so you will see some differences this year in terms of how we celebrate the emancipation celebrations. And of course, we are going to make sure that we keep the costs down, and this year will serve as a template for years to go by, for years to come.
Even with the passage of the storms, the floods, etc., it is never inappropriate to celebrate emancipation. I can't think of a scenario where our Emancipation Festival should be postponed or cancelled. Now, you might cancel and postpone certain events, right? Fair enough. You might scale back the expense and the cost and, you know, and the breadth of the festival. That's understandable. But to not have a festival is unconscionable for me. I think whether or not you have, you know, how many nights you have a village, how many nights you have international guest artists, you know, how much music entertainment you have, that's a conversation to be had. You know, you can scale up and scale down, right? But I think that's a distraction, because festival at the end of the day is not about, you know, how many guest artists come to perform in the village. That's not what festival is about.
Last year, because of the flood, we had a little thing. This year, we may have something scaled down, but whatever we have, we must have that Emancipation Parade or Re-Emancipation Parade every time, so that we can instill and let the world know that we are free.
The journey continues, and it is now the task of our leaders and those in the community to continually educate the younger generation on the history of their ancestors and eventually pass the torch of freedom which they will carry for other generations.
Teaching our children our history, this matter of storytelling, so it's not just about just having 1 or 2 weeks of celebration. I think it ought to be a year-round thing where parents are teaching their children, where it's part of the curriculum in school, and everybody, like the Bible speaks about the people of Israel in Deuteronomy, they want to teach their children, write it on the post, do everything they can. When they get up, when they go to bed, just talk about it. And oral history is one of the ways that we have come to know so much about ourselves. So it's important to keep it going. And no matter how challenging it gets, we have got to continue to pass on our culture and our rich heritage.
Again, it's important for us to continue the festivities, again, to make sure that the information and the lessons learned are passed on from generation to generation, because slavery can come in many different forms. Back in slavery, yes, it was in forms of chains. It can come in many ways in economic slavery and different things. And so we have to make sure that we continue to remind our people of what happened to us and how we are transitioning and how we need to ensure that we keep focused and keep our minds alert to what is happening around us.
It's very important for us to have this celebration for our younger generation because it gives them an idea of where we came from, where we are, and give an idea where we might be going. But it inculcates in them our history. So I think the parade gives them a colorful representation of our history, and in that formation, they won't forget it easily.
We have to carry this on because our young people also need to understand even more so why we're actually celebrating festival. And these events help to usher them in and reinforce them.
Now, we look towards the future with hope and optimism, and the clarion call is being echoed to restore and revive cultural scenes into the festival celebrations, which every year reminds us that we are no longer slaves. We are being called upon to embrace our freedom and preserve our heritage by revisiting and revitalizing our culture for the generations to come.
But we are one of the few festivals in the archipelago that is expressly timed to coincide and mark emancipation. All right, so this is one of the few, cultural festival experiences that you can have in the region that is expressly marked and tied towards the ending of slavery. I think it's vitally important that festival is held and maintained, regardless of whatever form it takes. I'm sure it will evolve in the future, but it's vitally important because it's one of the few opportunities that we have, right, to sort of express who we are.
I think we've been saying, and everybody say that the festival is a display of our culture and our heritage and whatnot. And I think the more troops that depict that are involved in the festival, the more interesting becomes from that aspect. But of course, you have to have the entertainment aspect as well. But the other area in which you can help to display that heritage and culture is to have the village built in such a way that it depicts that. You can have in the village, for example, the old straw hut that we spoke about, the old stone oven, and these things that you could have as part of the demonstration in the village that could actually be an attraction. So people could actually, go there to be able to interact. And even in those sites, then you could also have someone from the tourist board or someone from some other part of government who will be able to speak to the particular significance of the building or the structure that is put there. Those are just something that can be done.
Yes, we intend to see much more of a cultural infusion in the future, certainly with starting with our food fair, and then there'll be some cultural depictions throughout that period of time. And we've infused the culture of the Virgin Islands in everything that we have done. I think you can look forward to a very good festivity this year, notwithstanding the reduced budget, but I think it will certainly have greater significance to the history and the culture of the Virgin Islands when we're all finished.
Dr. Quincy Lettsome, in his poem on Emancipation and the Sunday Morning Well, reminds us, with pride and blowing of the conch shell horn, our august destiny stars firstborn. Tons of shouts of joy and acclamation, welcome reading of proclamation.
It set our founders' fathers free again. Freedom, emancipation, the happy refrain. It laid a cornerstone of our nation, prop to each succeeding generation. It planted the roots of our heritage, which has grown and spread down the age. It set on fire our aspiration, embryo of indigenous ambitions, the birth of a national vision and dream for our island's ever-expanding stream. It sowed seeds of August festivity, of festival of color and pageantry. It inscribed us with an identity that shall last until the perpetuity, like ever-flowing Sunday morning well that bubbles freedom with each watery swell.
1, 2. Rise for the country, see the children rise.
For your country,
Whoa.
for your country,
Rise for the country, land beloved, BBI.
for your country, for your country,
Rise for your country, come see the children
for
rise.
your country,
Whoa.
for your country,
Rise for your country, this land beloved,